Hey everybody, I just wanted to do a little video on CO2 and how I made my kit that I've got here that works with the CO2 ladder that's in the back of the tank. So all I've taken is two 2 litre bottles. It could be any 2 litre bottles at all that you want, and then I've taken a small bottle. This little one here is a Ribena bottle, and I've just used a pair of scissors, because I didn't have a drill handy, to scour a hole in the top of each of the bottles, as many holes as I needed. So for this first one it's just the one. This one I had two, so I've got the tube from this one coming across into this one, so that if it does leak any fluid, that it just falls into this one and tops this one up, which is why also this one hasn't got quite so much fluid in as this one. And then the tube from this one runs down into my bubble counter, so I can see how many bubbles of CO2 are being produced, and I've got that obviously below the waterline so I can count the bubbles. And then the airline coming from this one is a different colour because it came with the CO2 ladder that I got, and that runs obviously down into the bubble count, the CO2 ladder, and it just makes sure that none of the solution ends up in the tank. So I use some bog standard fast action dried yeast, 8 sachets. I use half a sachet per bottle, and then I pour in as much sugar as I feel necessary. Usually as I pour it in, this is lukewarm water, so it's warm to the touch, and I usually fill sort of to the bottom of the feet around here, and some of it will dissolve as it floats down, and then this is the extra, and then I give it a shake so it all dissolves. You can activate your yeast separately if you wish, and then pour that in as well. I tend to just pour it in the top. As long as the sugar's dissolved into the water and the water's of an adequate temperature, it should activate the yeast anyway, and then you haven't got the mess of messing up another tub or anything like that. So add that all in, screw the caps back on, and then it should start working within a few hours. Depending on the way you've done your mix, it can start working quicker than that. I have had it start working within 10 to 20 minutes before. I don't think that's a particularly usual scenario. The reason I've got blue tack on the top here is I found that I had a seal issue, and after the first week or so of having my units up and running, they stopped working, although they were still producing CO2, and I couldn't work out where the leak was, so I just decided to seal them all with something, and the only thing I had handy was some blue tack, and that did the trick perfectly, and I've not had an issue with leaking gas from the bottles since. So definitely a good idea to do that, or you could do it with silicone or any other medium you've got. I like doing it this way in case I ever need to take the bottles to pieces. I then haven't got to waste the tips of the tubing that I've used. So yeah, so half a sachet of yeast, 3/4, 2/3 a bottle of water, and then as much sugar as you deem necessary. The more yeast you add, the faster it will produce CO2, but the faster it will run out as well. My last lot lasted me about 2 weeks, but it was only bubbling very slowly. But where I had my new CO2 unit, which some of you may have seen in my other videos, which is just there, that's actually run out now, which is why I've redone my CO2 unit. So that's there and running, and eventually once it started going, it should be producing CO2 that will run up that ladder at the back there. So the bubbles start off small at the bottom, and by the time they get to the top they're nice and small, so the tank water has absorbed enough of the CO2 that it's a decent amount just for a home kit. So if you can't afford a pressurised kit, this one here cost me £59, and you can buy the refills I believe for about £13 to £15 at certain fish retailing shops. This home kit, if you ignore the fact that the bottles don't really cost me anything, all in all I think the yeast cost me something like 70p, and the sugar was like £1. So for £1.70 I've got about 2-3 months supply of yeast. So, and I already had the tubing left over, so it is a really cheap way of doing it if you can't afford to pay for a proper kit. And it does give you really good results, because I've not long had the pressurised CO2 kit. I've had all this plant growth just from having my home kit, so it's definitely worth doing. And yeah, if you've guys got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Let me know. Thanks very much. Bye.